I imagine there are companies out there that consider customer experience to be customer complaints.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So again, it's callous. There's no thought behind it. It's just, you've had a bit of a crappy experience. C'est la vie. That's not the way to treat your customers.
When you've worked with businesses like this, I mean, I don't expect you to mention any specific companies, obviously, but what are the biggest mistakes you see people making in their customer experience?
Honestly, obviously nobody sets out to deliver a bad customer experience.
Apart from Virgin
Everyone,
Media.
yeah, apart from them, yeah.
In this episode of the Engaging Marketeer, I am speaking with Katie Stabler of CULTIVATE Customer Experience. So, Katie is a CX expert, and if you're not sure what CX is, it's customer experience. I kind of just said that. So I'm going to be talking to Katie about how businesses can improve their customer experience and create a plan to get better customer experience, which is of course important to retain customers for longer and get them to spend more with you. Because if you're doing it right, you're going to make more money. If you're doing it wrong, you're going to lose customers and you're going to lose business. So it's kind of important. Let's talk to Katie and see what she does. Customer experience.
Mhm.
What exactly is that, and why is it so important for businesses to know about?
Oh, that's a massive question. What is
I know, I thought I'd open up with a simple one.
what is customer experience? Well, so I think customer experience is a little bit like the old saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So customer experience means different things for different people and different companies. But what we can all agree on is that we are all customers and we all have a expectation of what we expect from the organizations that we interact with. And it is how an organization deliberately designs and delivers the experience to their customers through every single touch point, every single interaction, right from the very second that that customer first ever hears about the company to the point where, for whatever reason, they stop engaging with that company. It's everything. It's a lifetime of experience with that company. And so few organizations deliberately practice good customer experience. For a lot of them, it just happens by accident and they try to get by on a bit of a hope and a prayer.
I was going to ask that actually because I've spoken to a lot of businesses over the years from a marketing point of view and as a client and customer, and I couldn't really think of too many that have actually thought about their customer experience and what they're going to do. So, how many do you think actually put this in a plan and have a strategy for this?
So it's growing definitely over the last decade. The insurgence of customer experience professionals has just been huge. But despite that, what's really sad for my profession is that every year there's, the big global data that comes out. There's the American Customer Satisfaction Index, the UK Customer Satisfaction Index. And this year, they all tell the same story that we are at a 17-year all-time low in customer satisfaction. So in answer to your question, how many companies actually practice it deliberately, explicitly, it's not to say that they don't, but if a lot of companies are, there's something not working, there's something not right. And quite honestly, what you still find is, despite, again, the growth in CX as a conversation, as a topic, as a profession, companies still massively under-resource it. So it's either, you often find marketing and customer experience are in the same pot. If you're a marketer, you get handed customer experience. Maybe if you work in quality assurance, you have customer experience on the side. If you're an operations lead, do a little bit of customer experience as well. It very often isn't a dedicated role in an organization with enough resource and enough time in the C-suite.
And I imagine there are companies out there that consider customer experience to be customer complaints.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, that's a fantastic piece of insight. It's a great way to support your understanding of customer experience. But oh my gosh, if you're focusing on customer complaints, you've done something very wrong with your customer experience. So that shouldn't be where it starts. Should be where you're preventing it, ideally.
Yeah. So how important is it? I mean, I've heard of UX is a big thing in our industry, user experience and how somebody works through a website or works through an application or works through a shop. And it's important to make it nice and easy and simple for them. But CX isn't something I hear a lot. So how important is it for a business to actually consider that? What are the financial ramifications?
Well, that's a great question. And when you're talking about UX, UX is part and parcel of customer experience, especially, now in the fact that we are in such a significantly digital age. UX, you just don't, there's very few companies that don't have a digital experience, and therefore UX is important. But CX is it's the wider piece. It's the umbrella that it all sits in. So people will often talk about customer service, and they will think that's customer experience. Well, customer service is just one element of customer experience, a very important element, but just one element. Customer success, so selling, another important piece. But customer experience is the overarching understanding of what your customers expect, what they feel, what they want, and your ability to operate on all of those levels. And if you are able to tick all of those boxes, you know your customer incredibly well, you know their expectations, you know the things that cause them frustration and the things that cause them joy, and you're able to maximize all of that from a return on an investment perspective, so the financial implications, you should be able to see huge cost savings in efficiencies, because all of the things that go wrong in your customer experience that you are firefighting and having to spend time, resource, money to fix, you should be able to eliminate proactively, because you know what's going wrong, so you can fix it and stop it going wrong. You can prevent complaints. You can maximize customer satisfaction. So absolutely tenfold increase, your customer retention, and see your customer lifetime value and customer wallet growth, wallet share grow. So the ability to demonstrate a return on investment on customer experience is often one of the biggest problems that a CX department faces, because there's a degree of correlation over causation. You can't necessarily 100% associate a returning customer because of a good customer experience, and there could be many other factors. But it's unequivocal that the better the customer experience, the more efficient, the more process optimized, and the more profitable your business will be.
And I see stats bandied around that change every now and then along the lines of it's 5 times or 6 times more expensive to recruit a new customer than it is to retain an existing customer. So from that basis alone, good customer experience saves you money. But why do certain companies, and I think we all know who they are, certain companies, particularly telecom and TV, only seem to care about new customers? They don't seem to care about existing customers, almost like it's really obvious what they're doing. Why is that?
It's frustrating, right, isn't it? I mean, yeah, you see those examples where you're a brand new customer, you get this fantastic fandangly offer, very enticing, yet you've been a customer for 10 years with this company and you don't get half as good a deal. That happens all the time. Why? I would say because they don't have a good customer experience lead is why, quite honestly. No, the mind boggles. I mean, companies that make it hard to stay as a customer, there's something significantly wrong in their customer experience strategy. And, because companies have to make money, of course. We're not in business for completely altruistic reasons. So it's not like you can say a good customer experience means giving 50% discounts every year. That's not what it's about. But it is about making your customers feel valued and feel that they are getting good value for their money. And there's lots of different ways you can do that, but recognition of loyalty is a massive one. And those companies that don't do it, I mean, I think you can only imagine that over the next few years they will need to change that strategy, but because there's always competition, there's always growth, and they can't continue to act in that way. But why they do it, I couldn't tell you.
Well, it seems to me that in certain industries they're all doing it. I mean, I'll name them. Sky and Virgin Media, obvious ones. They don't seem to care that they're alienating existing customers in exchange for new customers because they know the options of where you go are quite limited. You're going to leave Virgin Media and you're going to go to Sky, and then Sky's going to do it to you, and you're going to leave, and well, there's only really Virgin Media, unless you get a Now TV box, which limits what you can actually have. It's almost as if they've got this monopoly within the industry where they think, sod it, we can treat our customers like crap. They're going to go there, they're going to get treated like crap, then they're going to come back to us. So, who cares? And that attitude really makes me sick, quite frankly, that they get away with it.
It's super frustrating, isn't it? And I call those captive customers. So when you're, as a customer, when you're in a position where, as you say, maybe there is limited choice, then you might stay with a company for reasons other than actually wanting to stay with that company. But customers always end up having choice. You're not captive for long. So as you say, there's a bit of a monopoly in those services. That doesn't mean to say that that monopoly is going to exist forever. What happens when the new Prime or the new Netflix comes along? These things happen, and customers were fickle beings. There is a number of people who have real loyalty and strength and will put up with a lot. But the statistics normally say that it just takes 2 bad customer experiences to jump ship. So it's your version of what a bad customer experience is. But if you're not feeling like you're a valued customer, I would say that's pretty high up there in a bad customer experience.
That's interesting. 2 bad customer experiences and a customer will jump ship.
Yeah. If you're loyal to a company, typically you'll put up with one. But the second times it happens, it's a little bit like that old adage, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. Other way around.
Other way around.
Yeah, other way around. Yeah.
I mean, what we were both talking about then, it reminded me of my parents, and typically an older generation, and they're the ones that really get shafted because they're the ones that respect loyalty. They're loyal to the company they've always used, and car insurance was a big one for that. It's like, I've been with Admiral for 15 years. I always pay the renewal on Admiral because they've looked after me. They've never done anything wrong. Yet if they ever looked at what the actual renewal was compared to what everybody else is doing, they'll know that the customers who just renew without looking at it, they're the ones that are subsidising all people that are getting the good deals. And they think they're being loyal, but they're being shown no loyalty whatsoever to the customer, to the businesses that are actually doing it in the first place. That frustrates the hell out of me as well.
You make a really good point. So I think the demographic of customer it's changing hugely. The older demographic definitely have more loyalty. You give car insurance as an example. Banks are another great example of that. People just stay with the bank forever. And actually, when you look around at some of the newer banks and the 1% interest on every transaction that you can get from just using your bank every day, it makes you question why more customers don't not disregard the loyalty, but don't consider moving away. But actually, the newer demographic are younger, the Gen Zs and all of those. They are a different breed of consumer. They value not just pace. So of course, we're an Amazon-led shopper these days. We like everything right now, next day. But actually, the new demographic of customer appreciates things which we haven't really massively considered as businesses before, like, ethics, the kind of not-for-profits that companies support, the values that they stand for. There's a massive insurgence in shopping local now and actually using smaller brands, the growth of Etsy and, small businesses. So the way in which we want to experience customer experience is changing, and the bigger companies are pretty good at what they're able to offer, but the smaller companies are able to make it really personalized, and there's a real magic in what smaller companies can do. The sadness is when those small companies start to become more popular, and with growth they lose all of the things that the initial customers went to them for in the first place.
Yeah, as you grow as a business, you experience problems with scaling as you would bring in more team members to do what it is that you're doing, and the passion and the drive that you had for your business isn't there with other people. So it's
Wow.
not the same experience. It's not the same love for it. And yeah, you can have a dip in quality as you grow, which is frustrating. It's frustrating. Where do you think are the best tips that you can give for a company to have good customer experience?
So the first thing is insight. So many companies might ask for some feedback, get a survey. There are 101 touch points across your company, whether you're big or small, in ways you can get insight, whether that's through, social media listening, you mentioned it before, complaints, just interaction with your website. There's data point after data point after data point, which tells you the behavior of our customers. Most companies are pretty good at collecting that data. Very, very few are good at using it. So I think that the biggest tip, and I would have most consistently to the customers and clients that I support, is use that data, collect it, analyze it, understand what it is telling you, and then crucially, of course, act on it. So once you've got this data and understanding, help your business specifically pinpoint your business change. If you've got a strategy to focus on point A over the next 6 months, but actually that point B is going to influence your customer experience in a much more significant way, focus on point B. Don't waste your money on point A. So collect insight and use it. Another thing, I'm really, really passionate about customer journey mapping. So this is the methodology of walking through your customer experience with your customer shoes on, your customer hat on, being the customer, and truly understanding how that makes your customer feel. So every single interaction, really granular, every button they have to click, every letter they have to read, every phone call they have to make, every agent they have to speak to. What do they want from that interaction? What do they get from that interaction? How does that make them feel? And for some companies, that might sound a little bit fluffy, expectations, feelings. But actually, that is so crucial, because if your customers are feeling frustrated, that the process is complex, that they're underwhelmed, that they're disappointed, then those customers are not going to come back next time. If your customers are having a seamless experience, they're satisfied, they have success, and you're giving them some sentiment, making them emotionally connected to your business, they are going to come back. But you don't know how your customer's feeling unless they tell you through feedback. But if you do customer journey mapping, you do know how your customer's feeling because you're experiencing it yourself. And then again, you're able to use that insight to hopefully drive change.
So there's a lot of crossover here between customer experience and user experience, isn't there? Because when we look at a new client, for example, we'll look at their website and how it's meant to work, and quite often there are some fundamental issues with the website that you think, why have they done that? Clearly they've not looked at that. That cannot be working.
Yes.
There was one I looked at yesterday where it was a carpet cleaner, and in order to book a clean, you would click the contact button at the top, and the contact button would take you to the contact page. But the actual website looked exactly the same on the contact page as the home page. So it looked like nothing had happened. So you click contact, you think, what's going on? And then you scroll right down to the bottom, and there's a form right at the bottom. Oh, there it is. That's how I contact you. They've made it really difficult for a customer to get in touch, which is going to cost them business. It's going to cost them sales.
Yeah.
And it's going to make the customer think, how hard is this to get in touch with this guy? And I haven't even hired him yet.
Yeah.
But people do that.
It's mind-blowing though, isn't it? And you and I and UX designers and other practitioners, we can look at this and exactly like you have, just think the simplicity of this change for what it would actually do to the experience. But that's a great example of just no real intent and thought behind the design, or not enough. And certainly, where has the experience been prior to the release of that happening? Have we tested it? Surely not. Who's tested it if we have tested it? Councils are notorious for this. If you go on a council website, try to find a telephone number, that's not through bad design. Well, it is through bad design. It's through bad experience. It's not bad website design. It's bad experience design. They don't want you to pick up the call, the
No,
phone.
it's deliberate, isn't it?
Exactly. But how frustrating is that as a customer? There's only so much you can do via self-serve, an email, or live chat. If you don't offer your customers the channels to contact that they want, again, it's a big in CX. But yeah, websites are sometimes a very, very clear and obvious sign of not practicing intentful customer experience.
I think the main problem with websites is there's so many people building them that don't know how to build a website, or technically know how to build a website but have no idea how to market a website that's going to be successful. So they have the skills to do it, but they don't understand why they're doing it or what it's for. And it's infuriating because a lot of businesses end up with websites that just don't work, just don't get them business.
No, and there's a bias as well, isn't there? So, we work for companies. Hopefully you've got passionate employees who care. We build something that we're very proud of, that we like, that fits in with what we want. But is that what your customer wants? We are very, very biased. And again, it comes back to that insight. But so many companies start by falling in love with the solution and not the problem. And if actually we just flipped that around and truly, again, this is incredibly important for marketing, but truly understand our customers, their personas, the demographic, then we should be able to jump over a lot of the hurdles we face with the likes of bad website design. And I say bad in a very loose term, but yeah, we're inward facing, we're biased creatures. We do what we like. We don't necessarily think about what is the best thing for the customer.
I hear that so often about, I don't like the way that looks. I don't like the way that is. I don't like the color of that. It's like, well, it's not for you. It's for your target market. It's for your client. I had one guy that wanted a website to be a particular shade of blue because he was an Everton fan. And it didn't relate to the market he was in at all. He just wanted it blue because he was an Everton fan. And it's just ridiculous things that people say like that. One person saying, I don't want to use Facebook at all for my marketing because I don't like it. It's like, well, again, you're in flooring, you're in carpets. Your customers are on Facebook. Whether you like it or not, that's where they are. If you're going to shut that off because you don't like the look of it, you don't like the way it is, you're basically closing the door on a load of customers who could get in touch with you. And it's just ridiculous decisions that they've just thought about themselves inwardly, as you say, and not thought outwardly about who am I actually marketing to, who are my target market.
This happens all the time when businesses are making decisions, though. It does. And again, and I'll bang on about it continuously, but this again comes in to the whole collection and use of insights. I worked with a housing association not so long ago who wanted to operate a new, more cost-effective communication channel, and they went straight in with WhatsApp, which on the face of it, great, technically it did what it needed to do, reasonably easy accessible. It was a cost-effective solution for them, or at least it would have been if it had worked. It didn't work because this particular housing association's main demographic was an aged population who did not use WhatsApp and did not like using WhatsApp. So instead of making it easier, it actually drove contact volume calls into the service desk because nobody wanted to use that channel. So what on paper looked very cost effective ended up being very costly, and it could have been avoided should they have just listened to their customers and found a better way. But there's a really great example of this where Disney, it's kind of like cult example in the world of CX, but Disney, the parks, they're full of fast food places to eat, all your hot dogs and lovely naughty food. They kind of did the opposite. They asked their customers, would you like healthy options at the parks? Customers went, yeah, we would. We'd love a salad. Walking around, hot day, don't want to be full of junk food. Let's get some salads in. Disney started to offer healthy food. Nobody bought it, because when actually people go to theme parks, they don't want to eat a salad. They want a hot dog and a pretzel and a popcorn. So it's kind of the opposite. They listened, but they didn't listen well enough. And actually, rather than just listening to customer voice, if they'd have actually looked at the inside, the action, the behavior of the customers, they could have saved a lot of money as well. So it's not easy. It's not something that you take at face value, but this is exactly why you need skilled professionals who are disciplined in the practice of customer experience to help you to understand the data and to truly know what it's telling you.
Well, that seems like a good segue into this then. So that's what you do, obviously.
Yes.
So how would you approach working with a business, a customer that wants your help? What are the first steps you would take?
So it's always very bespoke. It typically starts with a maturity assessment. So a little bit of a touch point as to where that company is on their journey to customer centricity. As I say, some people, it might be the first engagement with customer experience. They might be dabbling and practicing themselves, but it might be the first time that they've actually put resource into this. Other companies may be a little bit further down the line. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies are really great at collecting insight, but the point in which they stop being so great is utilizing it. So typically, it's a little bit of a maturity assessment. Where are you on your journey? What do you need? Always, it comes down to looking at the initial insight. So a bit of a data gathering exercise. What have you got at the moment? What's it telling you? What are you doing with it? And that's normally a very good starting point to help companies understand where their gaps are, what they're good at, what they need to be focusing on. And sometimes also companies are pretty good at knowing what their problem is, but just not knowing how to get over it. So it's a bit of a three-pronged approach. Maturity, where are you? Insight, what are you doing with it? And problem areas, what do you know of? And maybe what don't you?
So once you've established that, what kind of actions can you get a company take to improve their customer experience?
So all different kinds of consultancy, and it really is, the scope is vast. But one of the most common things that tends to happen is there is no robust approach to, as I said before, the insight collection and use. So one of the most common actions that companies take when working with my consultancy is to implement a more robust process. So whether or not that's utilizing a customer voice of the customer tool, so bringing in some new technology to support them to collect and analyze that data and then use it. Part of that is also actually building the resource around it. So again, depending on my engagement, I can do that for them, or I'm supporting a company to put that process in place. And the process needs people. So sometimes it can be around upskilling and training people to be able to analyze and use the data. Also, a really big thing is the strategy piece. So most companies, have operational strategies. They know what they're doing with their business. They know the tools, the people, the process that they have to have in place to do all of this. Quite often, if you don't have a CX capacity, it's how does the company then put that into their business, and where does it fit, and how does it infiltrate the rest? So often a big piece is to help a company to, once they have a CX resource, whatever that looks like, a full-timer or somebody who's taking on that additional action, how does that then tie in with the rest of the business? So it's often around building a customer experience strategy that attaches itself to the operational strategy, that attaches itself to the finance strategy. And it helps the business to understand very clearly how it all ties in and why that's important. So it can be absolutely anything from that strategic level to the tools and technology implementation, right down to basic training. It can just be as simple as sitting with frontline staff and training them on the basics of customer experience, from communication to all of the much sexier, fun stuff around proactive wow moments.
And when you've worked with businesses like this, I don't expect you to mention any specific companies, obviously, but what are the biggest mistakes you see people making in their customer experience?
Honestly, no, obviously nobody sets out to deliver a bad customer experience.
Apart from Virgin Media.
Yeah, apart from them, yeah. Everyone sees the value of it, right? The simple premise of you want to make your customer happy and come back, standard. Where most companies fail is genuinely prioritization. It's always the case. Companies are busy, right? There's a million and one things to do. There's never enough time to do it. There's never enough money to do it. There's never enough skill to do it. And customer experience always tends to fall to the bottom of the list. And this is with most companies that I see. And we know it as customers because we feel it, we feel that experience. But it's the problem with customer experience is that it sounds all fun and lovely. We're making customers happy and happy, happy, joy, joy, unicorns and magic sprinkles. Actually, what customer experience is in reality is friction hunting. We are the people who come into a business and say, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. And with that recognition that there are all of these problems and pain points for your customers comes action. Once you know this, once you see this, you need to do something as a business to prevent it, to stop it, to improve it. And that takes time and effort and money. And you can very quickly see the shiny, exciting lights in people's eyes when you come in as a customer experience consultant to help them progress their business. And then that light can slowly diminish when they see the volume of activity that is going to be needed to actually make those improvements. And then when things start to get deprioritized is when actually people aren't seeing the value of the customer experience initiatives. So CX needs significant buy-in. And when I say significant buy-in, I don't mean that it needs significant resource, because everything that a CX professional is telling you to do should be part of your operational continuous improvement pipeline anyway. It's something that's going to happen, but it needs buy-in. It needs to be prioritized. There needs to be accountability, and there needs to be that continual change. Otherwise, again, you're just listening and you're not acting.
And I suppose in order to get the buy-in as well from the members of the team and from the owners and managers, they're going to need to have some kind of understanding of what impact it's going to have on their business. Now, you touched upon it earlier, how it's difficult to measure success. But what KPIs do you put in place? What measurements do you actually put in place to show, look, this is how we're actually going to show that this is working for you as a business?
So there's loads of the kind of the big obvious ones, which maybe people will have heard of. So Net Promoter Score is a really common one that companies use. And if anyone hasn't heard of Net Promoter Score, you most definitely will have answered the Net Promoter Score question, because it is that question: how likely on a scale of 1 to 10 are you to recommend my business to a friend or family? So that's a loyalty indicator, and that's often done annually. And that's great. So that's one. But I much prefer things like customer satisfaction. So how satisfied are you? That's typically asked on the back of an interaction. And there's a degree of difficulty to this, because if I'm the customer, if I'm having a really bad day, but it was a relatively okay experience, I still might not score them very great because the capacity that I'm in. Customer effort score is the one I would most recommend to any business. It's industry agnostic, so it applies everywhere. And customer effort score is quite simply, how easy was it to interact with my business? And the reason it's so important is customer effort is actually known now, research proven, to be one of the biggest indicators of loyalty. So the easier you are to interact with, the more likely you are to come back as a customer. And if you put that into an example, maybe the last time you were on hold on a call center for ages, and then you've already put your details into an IVR and you speak to an agent and they ask for the same details that you've already put in, and then maybe the agent can't answer your question, so you're on hold again, and then you get a feedback request at the end, which is just frustrating because you've got a really crappy experience. You're like, why do I get this? So you can see really clearly how that isn't an easy experience. And then the next time I have a problem, am I likely to contact the contact center? Probably not, because it was so rubbish the first time around. So customer effort score is a great one for any company. But also then they started to get more bespoke. So I'm a big advocate of ultimately understanding what your customer outcomes are and your business outcomes, and then working backwards from there to put in your measures and metrics in place. So, for one company, the customer outcome might be something as simple as speed. Just need to deal with them fast, quick pace, in which case, obviously, you would use like an average handling time as some kind of indicator of CX. But for another company, the most important thing for the customer might be to feel like a loyal, valued customer, in which case, you might use something more like NPS. So I'm big fan of bespoke metrics, but if you were going to chuck in a standard one, customer effort score.
The customer effort score really rang true with me there, because there's a particular business, I'm going to name them again, it's Santander. And whenever I have an issue with a debit card or a credit card for business accounting with Santander, I think, why would I even bother calling them? There's no point. I just will not deal with it. And I've mentioned this to other people at Engage Web. I want to move bank accounts from Santander because they are just horrendous. They keep blocking the credit card when I'm making regular purchases, which are exactly the same as the purchases I make every single month. And I know to deal with it, I've got to be on the phone for a good half an hour, go through some automated crap, then speak to at least 3 different people answering the same goddamn questions over and over again, just to get my credit card to work for something that should never have happened in the first place. So I just think I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. And maybe they make it like that deliberately so that you just won't bother doing it.
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating. I will never recommend them. I will never use them. They are horrendous for customer experience. Just horrendous.
And there'll be people listening to that going, yep. Whether it's Santander or another company, but that is not an uncommon experience. And it's like what we were talking about earlier with websites, that the not being able to find a number or clicking on a button and it not being clear that you're progressing. That is a perfect example of it not being an easy experience. Whereas on the flip side, when you do get an easy experience, because we're so because we don't expect it anymore as customers, because we're so used to crappy experiences, when it does happen, it blows us away. So there's a company called Fit. It's an on-demand fitness application. They started during the pandemic, and really great company, really good value for money. Like I'm a huge advocate of them. But I was an even bigger advocate when the one time I needed to contact customer service, their actions were fantastic. So basically what happened is I'd renewed my membership, I'd accidentally clicked on the monthly as opposed to the annually. It works out a lot more expensive. So I contacted them, and I knew that I could cancel the membership in Apple, the settings myself, and then restart it. And that'd be fine, but I'd be basically paying a month's extra of membership, and kind of, it didn't make it as cheap as the annual subscription would be. So I was hoping that they would have a solution. Their solution was exactly what I thought it would be. Change your settings, cancel it, restart. I was like, okay, fine. It wasn't the best outcome because I was hoping for a little bit more, but I wasn't disappointed. I didn't respond to their chat message, but 8 minutes later, unresponsive by myself, they came back onto the chat and said, do you know what? Actually, I'll give you this discount code. So cancel your membership, rejoin as we said, but here's 25% off. Now, that blew me away because, as I say, I wasn't particularly dissatisfied with the experience anyway, but they proactively, through no real need, and gosh knows what had gone through that customer service advisor's mind, but they made it really easy for me to want to stay as a customer. They popped me over a code, simple chat message, happy days. So there's such a value in just making it easy for a customer to want to stay with you, and easy for them to interact with you. And there's so little, I think there's so little organization value put on that. We take things for granted. We just think that customers are going to come to us, buy our products and services, and not really care, when actually we all do care. And it, as we said before, just takes 2 not so great experiences for that care to grow enough to say, bye-bye company, I'll try somewhere else.
No, I love that, and I've had so many examples of that over the years as well. There was a hosting company we used for websites that used to be really great, for customer service. Any problem that you'd have, they would deal with it very quickly. They would go above and beyond and do things that hosting companies wouldn't normally do. But then they got bought out by a much bigger, well-known national or international company, and they started adopting all of their customer service practices, and it was terrible. You were waiting hours for a response for something that was urgent. They weren't helping at all. They were sending you templated responses back, so you knew whenever you raised a ticket with them, you knew you were going to get another templated response back that didn't answer the question, and you'd have to explain it again. That is so frustrating. And we ended up moving to another hosting company, which was set up by a lot of the people that used to work for this one before they were bought out, realized how crap it had got, and then went and set up their own business and moved to them. Lost on customer service, and we went to the new company on customer service. But it's so common.
It is. And you just said it, templated responses. Absolute bane of my experience with working with companies. Even just as a customer myself recently, I'd contacted a company. What had happened? I'd sent some items back and had got a refund, but the refund was only a partial refund, which I wasn't expecting. So I'd messaged the company, and their response was, "Oh, we're sorry, your refund hasn't been processed. Like, can you give us proof of postage, etc.?" It's like, no, you haven't read my message. It was clearly a templated response. I was telling them that it had been processed. It was just processed incorrectly. It's so frustrating, because that's an extra step as a customer that I have to take, when actually, if that company had have just read and responded properly in the first place, not only would it have saved me time, it probably would have saved them time and money, because they're having to spend less customer service advisor resources dealing with a growing unhappy customer.
And the more unhappy your customer gets, the more vocal they get.
Absolutely. And the more likely that is to escalate. And you, again, as a company, you can see these internal costs building, which goes right back to our conversation at the beginning around how, if you practice intentful, deliberate customer experience with design and thought at the beginning, you can avoid all of that, and you can optimize your cost efficiencies.
The worst example, I'm going to ask you in a moment as well, but the worst example I've seen of customer service is something that just continues to happen, and it's Virgin Media again. If you look on Twitter, and I don't know if you're a big Twitter user, but it's a cesspool of toxicity now, so I don't advise anybody go onto it if you haven't been on it before. Anybody that becomes a new customer of Virgin Media, they get their digital box delivered by Yodel, and they constantly take to Twitter because it hasn't arrived when it's supposed to have arrived, because they've been given a slot by Virgin Media, and Yodel doesn't do slots. So it never arrives when it's meant to. So they tweet at Virgin Media and Yodel and saying, my Virgin Media box hasn't arrived, I'm a new customer, I'm disgusted, I want to cancel. Virgin Media will always respond and say, you need to get in touch with Yodel to find out when it's going to be delivered. Now, I know that's incorrect, because Yodel will not deal with the customer, because the customer is not the customer of Yodel, they're the customer of Virgin Media. Virgin Media is the customer of Yodel. So they keep telling customers, go and speak to Yodel about the delivery. The customer goes and speaks to Yodel about the delivery, and Yodel says, we can't help you, you're not our customer, you need to speak to Virgin Media. And you've got these automated messages going back and forth, with the customer just getting more and more irate, that they're being essentially lied to. They are being lied to. And that's their first experience as a new customer with Virgin Media. I don't know why Virgin Media is still going. Jesus Christ, it pisses me off. But they do that. You just look on Twitter today. Just put in Yodel and Virgin as a search term, and you'll see customers being lied to by Virgin Media and getting irate. I don't know why they keep doing it. But that's an example of awful customer experience that continues to happen because, again, there's not a lot of choice. If you live in an area where you can't have a satellite dish, you've got no choice. Although Sky's got this new Sky Glass thing now, which doesn't involve a dish, so that maybe takes that out of the way. But what's the worst example of customer experience you've seen? Maybe not necessarily that you've worked with as a customer, as a business.
But just on that point, though, they have clear insight. As you said, that is all over Twitter. Why aren't they acting on it? What are they? Who is in charge of that process, and why isn't it being made better? It's the mind boggles.
Every day for years, it's been every single day. You go on there, it's the same stuff.
It's how How? Yeah, that was crazy. And that whole, passing the accountability from business to business, so frustrating. I find the most painful customer experiences are the ones where there is just obvious callousness. So, just a personal example again, and this is hospitality, and
Mm.
hospitality, it's a very 50-50 split between great experiences and naff experiences. In this particular experience, I've been served a drink with a squished up receipt in it, like just floating
In the receipt, in the drink.
in the drink. Yeah, so it was just a glass of water in a restaurant, big chunky receipt, not stuck to the bottom of the glass, hidden. It wasn't like a Pepsi that it was all hidden, just floating in the top of the water.
Oh.
And I saw her put the drink down and then leave. And I called her back over and said, "Excuse me, there's a receipt in my drink." So, gosh knows, like, was it a drink of somebody else's table? Like, how do you know how that happened? So there was callousness in the fact that she hadn't even looked for a start. But what was worse was just the complete kind of blasé response afterwards of like, "Oh, I'll go get you another one. Come back." No apology, no explanation. I think again our expectations of customers grow. I would have expected, do you know what? I'm really sorry about that. I've knocked 10% off your bill, something like that. Nothing. So when you're that lackluster and you lack thought and you lack care and you've got no desire just to try and recover that experience, that is enough for me to never go back to a company again. I had a very similar experience with Gusto's actually, where we just didn't get the meal at the end. Like we were literally there for the 2 hours. They kept saying, "It's coming, it's coming, it's coming." We had a taxi booked, got to about 5 minutes before. I was like, obviously, we're not going to be able to eat our meal now, so we're going. She came over with 20% discount off the bill. So we haven't eaten our main meals. Okay, we've had a start and we've had a few drinks, but we've come here for a meal which you haven't delivered. I was like, "I'm not going to be paying any bill." And the response was, "Oh, okay, I'm really sorry about that." If it was that easy, if she was expecting for me not to pay the bill, why didn't she just comp it in the first place? Again, I'm not saying every company should do that. It's not always the way. But what they would have done if they had have comped the bill is made me think, oh, they care. They care enough about me as a customer, and I might go back. But they didn't, and I certainly won't be. So again, it's callous. There's no thought behind it. It's just, you've had a bit of a crappy experience. C'est la vie. That's not the way to treat your customers.
It went with the example with the drink, for example, and the receipt in it. Was that a waiter or a waitress, and were they, say, teenagers, or were they of an age where they should know better?
Absolutely of an age where they should know better. Absolutely.
Wow, I've been to America a lot, and it's strange. Well, it's not strange, I suppose. The customer service in America is phenomenal, phenomenal, because
Right,
because they get paid less than what we would call minimum wage, and they work pretty much exclusively for tips. There's some places they don't get paid anything; it's all tips. But obviously, they have a culture where you have to tip. If you don't tip, then they'll chase after you. Do you think there's something about the way we work in the UK that are we paid too much? Do we not care? Are we not incentivized to care? What is the problem with hospitality in the UK? Go on, solve it now.
Actually, there's a huge conversation around employee experience versus customer experience, but ultimately you can't have one without the other. And if your employees feel undervalued, they don't care, then this is where your customer experience is going to suffer. And in hospitality, it's we know that actually it's not a fantastically paid industry, typically speaking. And unless you're in there for desire, career progression, that's your love and passion, fine, fantastic. But there are a lot of people who work in that industry who are, temporary workers who bounce from location to location. And if that worker, that employee doesn't have a strong connection or care to that organization, it's just a place that they're going to pay the bill, then that's where you start to see that. But if you just need to nurture good employee experience. And the better that is, the more likely they're going to then care and deliver a good customer experience.
I think that's good advice there, because my daughter's a student at John Moores University in Liverpool, and she does temporary work at hospitality as well. So she does some stuff for Liverpool Football Club, other sports venues around the UK, and they bust them down. Sometimes they bust them down to London, which is crazy, to take people from Liverpool to London to work essentially behind a bar. Doesn't London have bar workers? But there we go. But depending on where she is, sometimes the people managing it are really nice and really helpful and really supportive of staff. And sometimes the customers can be, what's the best word? Arseholes, depending on where they are, particularly if it's
or is it always right?
Yeah, if it's a sports venue where there's a lot of people who are quite pretentious and drink a lot, like race courses, for example, where they think they're really important and they get absolutely bladdered in the first half an hour and then just throw their cash around. So I realise the environment for hospitality can be often very bad for people who work behind bars and work serving food. So it's almost a combative us and them scenario in many cases, which can lead to a poor customer experience because there's other customers there that are letting it down for everybody else.
It can be, definitely. And again, it does come back to knowing what your customers like and want. So, if you're like I don't know, like a beef eater, you're going to know that your customers want to come in, have a pretty cheap and cheerful meal, get served quick, get out. And if you can deliver that, great. Whereas other places, like maybe local pubs, if you're a customer, a frequenter of a local pub, you want to feel like a local. You want to be recognised as a person who comes in all the time. If you've got a really high turnover of staff, that local person isn't going to feel like a valued person because the new member of staff's not going to recognise you and say, oh, hi Dave, nice to meet you. Great to see you in here. And you miss that. And it comes down again to where you are, what your customers want, what they expect, and your ability to deliver on that. And that's a tricky one, of course, because with high turnover, you can't expect every member of staff to recognise every person who walks through the door. But still, there are companies who deploy really clever techniques to do that, like hotels who have your ID. So when you walk in the door and the very clever concierge setup sees you come through the door, picks it up like as looking at your reservations, recognizes your picture. Hi, Mr. Jones, really nice to see you. They don't see you as Mr. Jones, but their ability to do that quickly and make you feel like, wow, you recognize me, I'm a valued customer. It can be done. It just takes effort.
Yeah, well, that's true. Even hotels like Hilton and even the Holiday Inn do that. If you're a regular member there, then yeah, you've not seen them before, but your information comes up on the screen, and it does make you think, oh, yeah, I am. That's nice.
It is.
It's a little thing, isn't it? It's a little thing, but it makes you feel better.
Yeah, I once went to a hotel and my birthday was coming up. There was no mention of it. It wasn't a special occasion, but she just happened to look at the date of birth and go, oh, it's birthday in a few weeks. Happy birthday. And that was it. It wasn't like, happy birthday, here's a bottle of Prosecco. It was just happy birthday. And that was just nice enough.
Well, do you know, we're pretty much out of time now. We're pretty much out of time. We've bitched and moaned about companies for a good hour, which I like. So if somebody's listening to this and thinking, well, I really like what you've said, you, not me, really like what you've said, how can I get in touch with you? How can I work with you? What's the best way for someone to do that?
LinkedIn's probably the easiest, or you can go on my website, which is CULTIVATEcustomerexperience.com, and all my contact details are there. I'm always happy for a quick chat, have a chat about what your needs are. That's fine.
Fantastic. I will put those links, including to your Instagram as well, and various other things that you've got. I'll put them all below the video on YouTube and below the podcast on the podcast channels. That whoever's listening to this right now, it's just scroll down and all the links are there, so you can get in touch. So thank you very much for being on this podcast. I've loved it. I've loved talking to somebody who knows as much about complaining as I do.
Yeah, I told you, customer experience isn't pretty.
It's certainly not. It should be, but it's not. Thank you.
Thank you very much.